Welcome to the inaugural episode of Flim Flam Film Forum. You can try saying that fast 10 times on your own later. I am Will Freeney, and this is my co-host, Anita Fernandez.
Hello, and thank you for joining us. This is the very first show for Flim Flam Films. And hopefully I'll get the hang of saying it before we're finished with it.
By the end of this juggernaut.
Yeah.
So as the title hopefully indicates, we're going to be reviewing films. And our opening film for this series is one that recently left theaters and is now streaming on Amazon Prime. And I know you're going to want to watch it if you haven't already after we're done reviewing it. And that is Sinners.
Sinners is a film that was written and directed by Ryan Coogler, someone who is he's a very young director, rather new on the scene and yet not. He's not exactly an overnight success. He's worked at film for quite a long time.
It's a vampire movie, but it's unlike other vampire movies in a number of ways, and it has a specific cast of characters that have their own attributes. Griots are kind of a shamanic component of the environment, and they were considered part of Yoruba culture, which was migrated involuntarily to the United States, this continent and hemisphere, due to slavery. But it comes from the Yoruba people, and one of the primary characters, Annie, would, I think, qualify as a griot. And then there's a question of, or the aspect of haints, which were a common explanation of supernatural phenomena within the African-American slave community of the 18th and 19th centuries. But Anita has researched the haint more thoroughly than I have. So,
Haints, and this is from Google. In Southern folklore, a haint is a malevolent spirit or ghost, often believed to be restless and vengeful. The term is derived from the Gullah Geechee culture of South Carolina and Georgia coast, where it's associated with spirits that can harm or cause misfortune. It's sometimes used as an alternative spelling of haunt. In Southern folklore, the term haint is often used synonymously with ghost, but it can also imply a more specific type of restless, potentially malevolent spirit. While both terms refer to the spirit of a deceased person, haint may suggest a spirit trapped between worlds, possibly with unfinished business or a desire for revenge. Some traditions even differentiate haints from other types of ghosts, suggesting they were particularly tied to a specific place or situation.
and in the case of Sinners, one of the characters analyzes their situation once they are beset by malevolent beings and says, "These ain't no haints. They're vampires." I believe that also was Annie's assessment, and an accurate one. There's no individual grudge being exercised here. It's plain old bloody zombie bloodlust. But it's initiated with just one character initially, whose name is Remick. Well, Remick represents a character from Irish folklore and culture, and he's kind of his grudge is specific, and it's the subjugation and oppression of actual Irish, ancient Irish folklore and culture, by the Christian church and the English in particular. Um, so, and Remick, maybe incidentally, coincidentally, or intentionally, reminded me also of Renfield, who is the assistant to Dracula in Bram Stoker's version, anyway, and also to Merrick, who is a female vampire in one of the Anne Rice Vampire Chronicles. But this Remick starts out all by himself, knocking on some of the local folks' doors and making them part of his band, which grows substantially by the end of the movie, whether they are a threatening horde outside the barn/juke joint, where the friendly characters of the movie are trying to have a good time.
Yeah, he's recruiting, as it were. Sinners was written and directed by Ryan Coogler. The cast stars Michael B. Jordan as Smoke and Stack. He plays twins. Miles Caton, who plays Sammy Moore. Delroy Lindo, who plays Delta Slim. Andreen Ward Hammond, who plays Ruthie. Omar Benson Miller, Cornbread. And Jamie Lawson as Pearline. Also, Haley Steinfeld as Mary, and she was awesome. She was great. Lee Jun Lee as Grace Chow, Yao as Bo Chow, Sam Malone as Terry, Jack O'Connell as Remick, and Buddy Guy as Old Sammy. And a little background on Ryan Coogler. He was, his film debut was he directed and he wrote Fruitvale Station, which was extremely gripping and a true story, and it lent heart and soul and sorrow to a terrible incident in the Bay Area at a BART station. That was in 2013, and since then he directed Creed, Black Panther Wakanda Forever, and so he's been busy. he's quite the achiever.
Indeed, and this is kind of still within that realm of his wheelhouse, to use the overused word, of covering Black experience from a mythic yet real seeming situation. I don't know about you, but I never felt that my disbelief had required suspension. You know, that this was that in Sinners in particular, but also in the Black Panther movies, it all feels entirely plausible, even though it is fictional.
Right, and I think that has to do with not only excellent writing. It all begins with the writer, but it also has to do with how the movie's presented, the sets, the background, the costuming. Everything plays into your perception, and if it's real enough, you don't have those little glitches, those little pauses, saying, "Oh, that's fake. That doesn't add up."
Along those lines, there was some great jump cuts that avoid the possibility of violence looking faked, like the challenges of vampire attacks, like the initial vampire attack when Mary turns and walks away. Rather than see her actually get bit, we just, as she's walking away, we see over her shoulder Remick suddenly taking flight, and then it cuts before, but you know what is going to happen.
Right. Also, the action seemed real. It didn't seem contrived, and I usually can pick out highly choreographed fight scenes. It depends, you know. If the camera angle is right, you don't have a gotcha moment. You don't see a fist flying and missing a face. that sort of thing, and mark it in your mind and say, oh, well, that was part of the choreography. No, this seemed a lot more real. The characters were able to get down and dirty, as it were, and literally,
And bloody.
and bloody. Yeah, so it seemed a lot more real. So, and I wrote a little something because this is something that really gets to me. I don't like it when you go and you see a trailer for a movie, and there are all these previews usually get grouped together before you watch the feature film that you've paid money to see. And I never did see the trailer for Sinners, but it wasn't until after I'd watched Sinners that I watched the trailer. The trailer basically told the entire story, beginning to end, which is not good for the average moviegoer. We like the story to reveal itself as the movie plays, rather than the tale be told before we get to the theater. In fact, had I seen the trailer, I would have felt a little cheated, but only a little, because the movie unfolds in the Delta country, Mississippi, the camera panning over fields of shrub dotted with cotton. And it's rife with imagery of the southern landscape of 1932, the backgrounds and sets meticulously crafted to send us back in time to the Depression-era South. From the cars and trucks to the clothing and signage, every aspect of this film is true to the time period.
And just to work off of what you were mentioning as far as the landscape, there were several scenes in which the shot was a wide, like a 180 frame of the horizon, and it just seems so flat and so to stretch on forever. And gives, although this is post-slavery, but it's Jim Crow, and how much other than legal terms had really changed. And you get a sense of the workers in the field being tiny specks in this vast cosmos of produce that they have to harvest.
Yeah, lost in a forever scenario.
But without providing any spoilers, to let you know what, if you decide to skip the trailer before seeing the movie, there are several plot lines that run and that are interwoven, and the one that carries through all the way to the very end is that of Sammy, who is the son of a preacher, and therefore known as Preacher Boy, but he has a special musical gift, and he has a personal gift in terms of making music, but he also has a gift from the twins, Smoke and Stack, of their father's guitar, which he plays masterfully, and in conjunction with Delroy Lindo's character, who is the keyboard and harmonica player. Sammy's presence is kind of a intersection of the church, the fundamentalist, usually Baptist, Methodist, Protestant kind of church that infiltrated the lives of slaves, and is a foundation of some of the descendants of the slaves still subscribe to that religious viewpoint of the Christian church. Sammy's father is one of those, but he makes a point of warning Sammy as he's about to head off to the juke joint to play his guitar that nothing good will come of this. He says, if you dance with the devil long enough, eventually he'll follow you home. But that never really plays out. And there are numerous references by other characters throughout the movie as to what really matters in their belief system prior to the imposition of Christianity upon them. And Annie is kind of the receptacle for that knowledge, the griot, who still understands the ways of the world outside of Christian black and white.
Also, it points up what was said during the first scenes of the movie, that basically, and this is paraphrasing, basically someone who is gifted with music is the special one, is the one who can kind of cross over between the spirit world and the real world, the human world. So, I think in that respect, Preacher Boy was both blessed and cursed because he had to follow what he had, who he was, and deep down inside, that was a musician. And he was born to sing the blues, to play the blues, and he was kind of touched by otherworldly talent. And so, it's, in a way, the devil did follow him home because he couldn't let go of his talent. He couldn't let go of who he really was, and the devil was always lurking in the background.
And there's the fact that initially lied to him in repeated instances and in slightly varied formats as to the origin of his special guitar. Initially, they told him that they won it off of some apparently famous character who he says, oh, well, if it's his. But toward the end of the movie, and this is one small spoiler, they reveal that it was actually belonged to their father, Smoke and Stacks, who was an evil man by their own assessment and designation. And so that is, I guess, evil, the devil. You just add a D to the front, and you take this D off, and you got evil. And so maybe their father, Smoke and Stacks, does represent the devil in some sense.
Yeah, and he was. It's revealed that he was really cruel to them too. So yeah, that's pretty good. I didn't think of it that way. I agree with that. So there's a definite masculine thread followed through this film. The lead is a man, and there are, both leads, I should say, are men, and so the story is told from a masculine point of view. However, women are given quite a bit of power in this movie. Absolutely. And I think that that's really, it's not only remarkable because in these days and times, most action films are very testosterone heavy, and women are window dressing, but these women were fleshed out characters, and I really like that aspect.
Yeah, they were all of them really, and to some degree were crucial characters to the overall patchwork quilt of this story. There's Grace, who is married to Bo, and they're the local retailers, but they're also cooperative associates with Smoke and Stack.
Yeah, and Bo has a definite connection. It looks like a friendship connection. Maybe, that friends are brothers type of connection.
Brothers in arms.
Brothers in arms, yeah. With, was it Smoke or was it Stack or was it both?
That actually served in apparently World War I, because this is set
right.
in 1932, and they're talking about how they had gone to war together, and then they had gone to war in Chicago.
And then come back to Mississippi so that they could escape the war in Chicago.
Because one of the great throwaway lines of the whole movie is when Sammy is riding in the back seat as the twins are taking him to the juke joint that they have just bought. And he asks about Chicago. He says, I hear they don't have Jim Crow up there. And one of the brothers, I don't remember which one, I don't know if you do, says, there's nothing different about Chicago except that it's tall buildings instead of plantations.
Right. So Jim Crow lasted a long, excruciating time. And because of the way the movie ends, which, I mean, it's probably a spoiler to say the word vampires in the first place, but Um, we're not going to go into the ending, but the ending felt redemptive and it felt like revenge. And I think that it served the story well to end it in that way.
There's an interesting ambivalence about vampirism in general. I mean, it's pretty much considered the face of evil, but on the other hand, vampires are eternal, as opposed to other bad, scary creatures like werewolves that can be killed with a silver bullet. Um, and although that silver bullet antidote kind of bleeds over into this story, but research provided the information that no, silver bullets don't really work with vampires. At least they may slow them down, may make them a little angry, but it's not going to kill them like it would a werewolf. The one certified antidote for vampires is a wood stake through the heart, and there was a lot of that. We'll just leave it at that. At one point, when we reached the denouement, there's a lot of wood stake flinging and shooting, but in the end, hardly anyone survives.
I just said we're not going to say the end.
On that bright note,
I just said we were going to reveal the end.
That's not the end.
Okay.
On the field of battle, because the movie doesn't end on the field of battle, it ends 60 years later. But on the field of battle, you get the impression that there was nobody that wasn't a vampire that was left alive.
Yeah.
But as far as Sammy and one of the brothers with whom he communicates towards the end of the film, they are both of agreement that that day, this is also so very Aristotelian, the completion of, except for the 60 years later, which is the ending, was kind of like an epilogue. But other than that, all of the action takes place within one 24-hour period, one day and the subsequent night. And shit goes really sideways over the course of that night. But things were looking up, it was as bright and sunny as they could be for the twins at the beginning, during the day. When they got everything in place, they were able to buy a barn to make a juke joint for their people to have a place to enjoy each other's company and music and dancing and food and all the good things that make for good fellowship. And they were able to buy that barn from a white man who, it turns out, is the Grand Wizard of the Ku Klux Klan, which is, looking at him, it's not too much of a spoiler to reveal that, because as soon as you see him, he is like every stereotype of a white racist overlord from the Deep South. The straw hat, the collared shirt open at the neck, the fat face, and the superior attitude, even when he's being relatively cooperative.
And even when he's bested at the end of that first scene, he's still kind of puts his hands in his pockets and whistles off, and just walks off like nothing has ever happened. So, yeah, he's pretty...
And he tells the great lie.
Typical.
So what are the takeaways for you? Is there a singular theme, moral notion that you think is conveyed that Ryan Coogler specifically wanted to convey?
Well, I have a weakness for period piece films. I love when a film is set properly and costumed, and the makeup is where it should be. It's all dialed in. I love that, because especially when I feel the director has taken pains to portray that time. And my takeaway for this film is that he made every effort to kind of dream us back into the past, and we are able to take a look at life in the Deep South during that time period, it's a small glimpse, and it's almost symbolic in that it's fraught with monsters. You know, this idyllic land that stretches out for miles, and this quiet, peaceful, the farm sounds of, buzzing and chirping birds and, that sort of thing. And then there's this horrid, terrible evil that permeates everything and is slow to reveal itself, but it's there nonetheless. That's kind of what I took away, symbolism, and but also going back, like I say, into the past. That was very impressive to me.
The overall arc of this story really reminds me of Black Wall Street, how Tulsa was a thriving black community. I mean, totally self-sufficient and thriving, rich, prosperous, confident, happy.
Yeah.
And white people fucking burned it to the ground. And so, no spoilers.
Well,
this is a similar narrative arc.
Yeah. It's similar.
But the forces of evil persist. When Remick has a horde of vampires behind him, dancing and celebrating their eternal nature now, I guess is what they're celebrating. But he's inviting the people inside who are not yet vampires to join them in a way that is like, yes, we can all be together. This is what, and I think that call from the forces of evil is going on today as well.
Yeah. He's basically saying we'll never die. We'll live an enchanted life, and we'll always be this age. We'll always be who we are now. And life ebbs and flows. It's not just one thing. And the characters seem to get that. But also, it's enticing to think that you're never going to grow old. You always have what you want. And, it's just like society today entices us through, let's get a bunch of plastic surgery or take tons of supplements to keep us young, that sort of thing. And it's not real life. Well, I guess it could be, as far as like supplements and I'm going to be probably cutting this whole thing out.
Eternal life. No, I think that that is kind of the ultimate aspiration of all of the health food industry push is the notion of eternal youth, not just eternity, but like you said, for vampires, once you turn, you're stuck. That's where you're at for eternity, which is not necessarily bad from that perspective.
To begin with. And then after...
And then a few hundred years later...
Yeah, maybe they don't like what they see and they want to get out.
And they want to get out during the daytime. So all the good stores are open then. But another...
Not Walmart, though. Not the same.
No. Actually, they could hire zombies as greeters at Walmart. That would be...
Yeah, who would know? Who would be able to tell the difference?
But one of the bigger questions, for the overarching questions for me, because the movie is titled Sinners, just sinners, not the sinners, not sinners in the hands of an angry God, just sinners. And who are the sinners? From Preacher Boy's father's perspective, Preacher Daddy, who was named Jed, I believe, is that right?
Jedediah, I think. Yeah.
From his perspective, all of the people in that barn who are having a good time are the sinners, and they're corrupting his son by letting him play music for them. But from our perspective, the perspective of the viewer, voyeuristically watching from the air as this all goes on, who are the real sinners?
Mm-hmm. Ryan Coogler asks that, actually. he he does his job. He forces us to take a look at that. Who are the sinners? And I appreciate that he makes us question and has so much to say without really saying it. Whoever watches that film with, how shall I say, a studied eye will get what I'm saying.
And even just absorbing it without any preconceived notions, I think you can gain that perspective. That if you think about what you just watched and its title, who are the sinners? And it's not the people that Sammy's daddy thinks they are.
Right.
Final thoughts. Oh, one character we could do a whole character rundown. And in future movie reviews, hopefully we will, because each one of the supporting characters in this movie, I mentioned Grace and Bo, the Chinese couple that run the local grocery store, actually general store. But there's also a standout character actor with the character's name of Cornbread, who is one of the early victims of the vampires, but is also a representative of the common folk. I mean, there are scenes in the barn where everybody's dancing and drinking and laughing and having a great time, and those are all peers and of Cornbread's and his wife, whose name was Therese.
Therese.
Therese, yes.
Yeah.
And one of the shots early in the movie, when the twins snatch Cornbread out of the field go with them and be their doorman, we see Cornbread and Therese actually in the rows doing the work of harvesting. And it's a reasonable presumption that the vast majority of the people in the barn enjoying the juke party that night were there somewhere in those fields also. But Cornbread gets to stand out amongst them, and he's a funny guy. He's got some great lines.
Yeah, he reminds me of Forrest Whitaker, and another great character actor. I really have great admiration for character actors. They prop up the leads and the romantic leads and add contrast and add depth to the story itself. So I thought he was great. None of the leads were cookie cutter. In other words, they didn't all dress alike and look alike. They were different in size, and because they were very different characters too. And that to me is also good writing. That's giving your characters freedom to form their screen character and form them from themselves, which would make a truer character, actually. So I thought that was really, really good. From the dialogue to the body movements, I thought they were very real and very relatable.
Yeah, and the costuming definitely helps in the case of Smoke and Stack in distinguishing, so that you can keep track of who's who, since they're both Michael B. Jordan. Because Smoke wears like a newsboy cap, and Stack wears a brim, and their characters are kind of reflected. That's kind of a reflection of their characters in that small detail, but also they're just two very different characters. And ever since I discovered there was such a thing in a workshop, the rack shot, and I'm never sure exactly what those narrow constraints of the definition of a rack shot are, but there were some shots where like the twins are in the foreground, but their nemesis, whether it's the clan or it's the vampires, are like over their shoulder. So they're always a presence in the frame, even if the camera's not focused on them.
Right, right. Cinematography was by Autumn Durald Arkapaw.
Cool.
And let's take a look here. Wow, she's from Oxnard, California. Very educated, went to the Film Institute, Loyola Marymount University, and the American Film Institute. Her work is Palo Alto, Loki, Black Panther, Wakanda Forever, and Sinners. Beautiful work.
So she's been with Coogler for a while.
Yeah, and I can see where he would stick with her because the cinematographers and the director's vision have to match. They just have to, or they're not going to get along. They're not going to be able to be successful with this film, and they're not going to be able to communicate properly. So for Ms. Arkapaw to get what Coogler is saying and vice versa, they have to be able to work in concert and be on the same page. That's not easy. That is really, really hard. But once and it looks like since they've done films together before, they've practiced this, the art of communicating with each other. Sometimes you can get so close with another filmmaker that you don't have to even speak. There are so many things that are understood, and I think that must be the kind of relationship they have.
It is a cooperative. Yeah, I wish I could remember. I was like earlier today that I just read about a different film project, and the director-writer's wording was like a set phrase. It was supposed to be without a plural, without an apostrophe for possessive. It was just supposed to be, I can't remember what the phrase was, but the actor, despite what the director said, what was written on the script or what the director was telling him to say, the actor insisted on saying it his way with an S on the end, which is like the antithesis of what you're talking about.
Mm.
People are working together to create something that everybody's happy with.
It's often, to me, it's often obvious when people are just there doing a job or they are invested. They're not just doing a job. This is something from the heart that they're working on. And it may not be that when they first get there, when they first read the script, but if they can develop that, it's obvious by the end of the film that they have been, there's a cohesive and very, the understanding is almost palpable. You can, and yet not, because that's the magic right there. That's what happens when they speak of the magic of cinema. That's it. That is it right there. That cohesive gathering of a group of people to make a dream and put it on a screen. I love that part. That's my favorite part. The understanding. Because it's said without being said. The music was fabulous. Okay, Ludwig Göransson. Ludwig Göransson did the soundtrack. He's a Swedish musician, composer, conductor, songwriter, and record producer. He's won several awards. He won 2 Academy Awards. And this is something I didn't know about him. And he's also very young. I think the ages being similar with all the people who crafted this film is kind of a stepping stone to greater understanding among the members of the cast and the crew, as well as the director and cinematographer. He understood the music. He understood the assignment. And the music wasn't too obtrusive. It was the proper background. It was also part of the period without resorting to old-fashioned implementation. In other words, it wasn't just a bunch of banjos and fiddles, you know. So I thought I really liked his interpretation of the film through music.
Yeah, music definitely, obviously, Sammy being the golden boy of the guitar, with the guitar, and Delroy Lindo being the established veteran who, but for his alcohol, would probably have been in New York on Broadway or something, except for the fact that he was black and it was Jim Crow era.
The one thing that stayed true as far as the music was the blues, this is the old-timey real blues, the Delta blues, and that stayed true. The chords and the beats were exactly what they should have been, and for that, I mean, he stuck with that and built off of it, and so that was very impressive to me. Yeah.
And I found it interesting commentary because it's just voices what you hear so much in the music verse of internet commenting on people's music. There's always the purists that say, "Oh, I liked it so much better before it went electric," and one of the twins says that to older Sammy at the very end of the movie. He's like, "I don't so much care for your electric stuff. I like the real music."
Okay, now you're giving away the end.
Well, you can edit that out if you think it really gives away the end.
Yeah.
It's not really our intent, but we're old and absent-minded, and if any spoilers are issued in the course of this podcast, we apologize in advance. Forget them between now and the time you actually watch the movie.
Another from Wikipedia about the Ludwig Göransson. He, as a record producer, has frequently collaborated with Childish Gambino, one of my faves, I like him, producing his studio albums Camp, Because the Internet, and Awaken My Love, among others. So he has also won 2 Grammys for Record of the Year and Song of the Year. And he's produced for Adele, Alicia Keys, Rihanna, Chance the Rapper's, is it Haim? I don't know. Justin Timberlake, Kendrick Lamar, Travis Scott, and Moses Sumney. This, again, is from Wikipedia. I don't know this artist here. So anyway, the right people. It was a perfect storm of the right people, the right look, the right impetus to put this film together.
Yeah, it's definitely an ensemble movie.
Yeah, definitely.
You need to think of a catchy catchphrase to sign off.
Keep flim flam on your mind.
If you flim, you better flam.
Hell, I don't know. What?
Finish reading your notes. Oh, there was. Let's see if you want to chop this into it. There's a stark contrast between, in terms of the sinners. What are the people in the church the sinners, or are the people in the barn the sinners, or is either of those explanations too simplistic. But there's a stark symbolic contrast. The church is tiny and white.
And everyone is dressed in white.
And it's silent. There is no music going on,
Yeah.
despite the traditional reputation of Southern Black church music being the essence of
Yeah.
the Black church experience.
Yeah.
There's no music. Everybody's just sitting stock still and quiet, and the camera doesn't look at any of them. It just follows Sammy in to where he reaches his father at the pulpit.
A question that kind of goes along with your question. Is it a sin to offer up what God has blessed you with? Or is it a sin to ignore it,
Or to deny it.
to deny it?
Hmm.
The first time Sammy opens his mouth and begins to sing, it's like a magical experience.
Right.
And Stack is blown away,
Yeah. he's
just
jaw
amazed.
dropped.
Yes. And he starts laughing and screaming, we're going to make a lot of money, you know. It's like that when someone with a gift, especially a gift of a singing voice, music, when they open their mouths and this sound comes out, it's startling, it's otherworldly. And that's kind of what that was. That was brought out in the film was great to me. And I thought it was very interesting that the Asian characters, when the daughter of the two, Lisa, goes over to get her mother to work to come over and talk to Smoke and Stack, she crosses a street and crosses into what across the street means. There's a thriving business that her mother is part of, she's probably owns, that is white. The culture there is white. All white people shopping there, all white, mostly white women. And so then the mom, Grace, crosses the street back over to the Black culture. And in that store, it's all Black people. There are no white people in that store, and it's kind of a symbolic crossing between the two cultures of the Asian people. I thought that was very interesting.
So that's it for the first episode of
Flim Flam Film Forum.
So that's it for the first episode of. Now we should do this like switch off. I'll say flam, you say.
No. No,
I say
you
film
say
and you say forum. Flim.
Flam.
Snopes.
Snot.
Film.
Flim Flam Film Forum.
Flim Flam Film Forum.
And please don't blame me for that name, because I can barely say it.